Okay, hello everybody. Hopefully connection is going to be good today. We'll be starting shortly. If you have any, if you perceive any difficulties with the audio or video, let me know in the chat. It looks okay at this end. Okay. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so we're continuing on with the series on the different realms, and we're working our way up through the sagas, that is the Dewa realms. And we've done the first two of 6, the Chatumaharajika, the 4 kings, and the Tawatingsa, the realm of the 33. Both of these first 2 realms still have a footing on the terrestrial plane, in that they're located on Mount Sinnaru, which is the center of the Earth, or the center of the world system, more precisely. Above the peak of Sinnaru, which is 84,000 yojanas high, which is the definition of a yojana is somewhat uncertain, but it's a multiple of miles, so it works out that Sinnaru is considerably higher, several times higher than the modern calculation of the distance to the moon. So we're talking a very great height. Now, each of the 4 heavens that are in space are each successively twice as far from the Earth as the one before. So the first, or of the higher heavens, the celestial heavens, is 84,000 yojanas above the peak of Sinnaru. So 168,000 yojanas above what we might call sea level. And then Tusita, the next one, is twice that height, or 168,000 yojanas above Yama. So we have a pattern of increasingly greater distances. Now, I'll deal with the Yama heaven first, because there's actually not a lot that we can say about it. There's actually very little detail given us in the texts about Yama, except that it being the first world separated from this Earth completely. It's located in space above the Earth, a considerable distance above the Earth. It's also, for that reason, the first realm that is completely free of conflict. The wars with the Asuras that plague the 2 lower heavens never reach as high as this. So they're called the contented ones, the peaceful ones. And as I said, we have very little descriptions or details here to go by. We do know that the king of this realm is called Suyama, and he when the Buddha attended to, when the Buddha ascended to Tawatingsa heaven to teach, Yama came down and fanned him with a yak-tail whisk. Now, this is a very minor detail, but that's pretty much all we've got in the sources for descriptions. Now, don't confuse Yama with Yama. There's a being or a deity called Yama who lives at the gate of the hell realms and kind of processes in the new incoming sinners that are showing up at the gates of Naraya. His name is spelled with a short A, Yama, and this realm is called Yama with a long A. And in the Buddhist cosmology, there's no connection between these two. There may be a historical connection going back to the Vedic period, in that in the Vedic cosmology, the third heaven was the realm of the ancestors. And Yama was the king of the dead, in that he was the first human. He was the Vedic Adam. He was the first human. And when he died, he became the first human to die, and he was made king of the dead. So there may be that vague connection in the past, but it's rather speculative. So moving on from the Yama heaven, the next one up is Tusita, which is special in the heaven realms in that it is the abode of the Bodhisattva, that is the Buddha to be. The Buddha that we know, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha of our epoch, he spent a long time there, several million years, before taking rebirth as a human and becoming the Buddha. It's always the last existence prior to becoming a Buddha is spent by a Bodhisattva is spent in Tusita heaven. The being who's reborn as a Bodhisattva in Tusita is one who has completed all the 10 paramis, so he's purified himself to a very high degree, and he's ready to take birth as a Buddha. And he'll do so only when conditions on the earth are suitable for the appearance of a Buddha. And there's a long list of conditions that make a time and place suitable for the appearance of a Buddha. Because of the presence of the Bodhisattva, and currently the Buddha to come, Maitreya, or Sanskrit Maitreya, who's often called the Buddha of compassion, he's currently residing in Maitreya, waiting for his time to be born as a human and become the Buddha, the new Buddha. So because of his presence, there's a holy quality or a dharmic quality to this realm, this level, that makes it a highly desirable place of rebirth for practitioners of the Dhamma. And we're told that many stream winners and Sakadagamis end up being reborn here, as well as many other individuals who are just very diligent in their practice and devoted. in Asia, it's often lay people will make an aspiration to be reborn into Sita, to be born into the presence of the Bodhisattva. There's a story in the Umanawatu about a man who was dying. He was in his deathbed, and his family brought in a group of monks to chant for him. And the monks were gathered around his bedside chanting, and all of a sudden the man said, not now, not now, go away. And the monks became offended and left. And then he asked his daughter, why did the monks leave? And she said, well, you told them to leave. He says, I wasn't talking to them. I wanted to hear the end of the chanting before I moved on. I was talking to those Dewas, and no one else could see the Dewas. There were 6 Dewa chariots that were visible only to him in the air above his bed. And they were all crying out to him. They came from the 6 heavens, and they were all crying out to him to come to their heaven. And he asked his daughter, who is more studied in the Dhamma, he asked her, which heaven should I choose? And she said, choose Tusita heaven, where the Bodhisattva lives. So he took a garland of flowers and threw it in the air. It landed on the yoke of that chariot, the Tusita chariot. And the other people in the room could just see the garland suspended in air. And then at that instant he died, and he ended up going up to Tusita heaven. So there is a quality of desirableness in going to Tusita. So in each successive heaven, these first 6 are all classified as sensual heavens, in that they're still within the realm of sense experience and sense desire. But we do have indications that the sensuality becomes increasingly rarefied or refined as we ascend. And this is made explicit in one passage. It's found in the Abhidharma Kosha, and is mentioned kind of peripherally in a couple of the Pali commentaries as well, that the sexual relations of the Dewas become refined. In the first 2 heavens, the ones that are on Mount Sinaru, they still make love. The Dewas make love in a similar way to humans, except that the act lasts longer, and the male does not emit any fluid. They don't reproduce sexually. None of the Dewas do. In the Yama heaven, they only embrace. There's no penetration. And in the Tusita heaven, they merely hold hands. And then the 2 heavens higher than that we'll deal with next time, they merely gaze into each other's eyes. They know it's no physical touching at all. And we can assume that this subtilization of sensuality would apply also to other things, like the music and the dancing and so on becomes more and more refined. I think someone asked me last week about whether the acharas, the celestial nymphs or dancing girls, occur in the higher heavens than Tawatingsa. And I gave a somewhat uncertain answer, but I did think about it and looked a little bit. And there is a passage in a story about a woman who died was reborn in the Yama heaven, and although it's uncertain whether it was Yama or Tusita, because there's two separate incidents of this story, and in each case they differ. In this case, they differ, but the point is that when she came down to earth, she brought some of her attendants with her. She came down to earth to pay homage to the Buddha, and she brought some of her attendants, female attendants, and they weren't described as acharas. They were described as dewa kanyu. So it may be, I think it's very likely that the acharas are a specialty of the Tawatingsa level. So amongst the people born, we're told that were born into Sita include the Buddha's mother. When she died 7 days after his birth, and she was reborn into Sita heaven. And also Anantapindika, one of the Buddha's wealthy supporters, was reborn there. And as I said, it's said to be a common place for stream winners and once returners to take rebirth, is into Sita. And it's a place, because of the presence of the Bodhisattva, one can hear Dhamma. So it has a special association with the Dhamma, with the teachings. So that's all I'll say today about those two realms, and we'll see what we got in the chat. Yama similar to Anubis weighing the heart. It's kind of a similar idea. Yama is an interesting character in that he appears to be reluctant. He's not like a horrible demon. He's not happy in his position. He had some mixed karma that caused him to become the lord of the gatekeeper of hell. And when people come into hell, he tries to find some way to excuse them, but if they not able to answer his questions, then he has no choice but to send them on. Unrelated, but didn't you have a black cat? Yes, I did. Shadow. She passed on. She was 12 years old. She got kidney failure, which is common in older cats, and she died. Can causality ever be violated? No. The short answer, no. In Buddhist philosophy, causality is considered to be kind of an iron law. There's no randomness and there's no arbitrariness. On average, how many devas are moral followers of the Buddha, and how many are hedonistic beings lost in sensual pleasures? The great majority are lost in sensual pleasures. There are some devas who are Dhamma followers, and it's said that there are different ways that a deva can be brought to the Dhamma. One is if a Buddha or other enlightened being visits that realm to teach, and even then, many of them are not convinced. They are afraid. It says when the Buddha taught in heaven, most of the devas became frightened because they never thought that they had previously thought they were immortal and everlasting, and when the Buddha taught about impermanence, they became frightened and upset. Another way that devas can learn about the Dhamma is if you memorize, while you're a human being on earth, if you memorize passages of Dhamma, they can be remembered by you when you're a deva. Next question. If causality is unbreakable, each moment must arise dependent on its direct previous moment, and no novel phenomena can ever arise, as novelty indicates an event independent of direct prior cause, which violates causality. From this can be deduced that all phenomena follow deterministic cause. Does the Buddha ever logically refute strict determinism, as the perception of making an effort is not incompatible with determinism at all? It could very well be an illusion. That's a complex question, and I think there's two aspects to it. One is the idea that nothing novel can arise. I don't think that logically follows if we take it that phenomena or reality is causally linked, but the causal links are so complicated that they're chaotic in the mathematical sense. So although they follow strict laws of causality, they're essentially unpredictable. There's a difference between unpredictability and randomness. So there can be a novel, and since every event occurs not just from one cause, but from a multitude of causes. There's a constant network of causes that bring about every effect. So there can be a novel rearrangement of this network that's never occurred before. It can be approached from different angles. One thing to bear in mind is that the Western philosophical concept of free will doesn't really apply, because there's no self to make a choice. There's no, because of the emptiness of self, of anatta. It's sort of a false dichotomy to say free will or not. There is a mental factor of cetana, which is volition, and there is in the Abhidhamma there's the concept of jhana, which is the moment when one makes karma, and that's colored by previous events. So it's not arising without prior causes, but it's not entirely determined by them. What else to say about this? The Buddha did reject determinism as a false view. In that it doesn't allow for any room for moral improvement. So I don't think that he really ever, to my knowledge, he never really gave what would pass as a strictly logical analysis and the refutation of determinism, but he definitely classed it as one of the false views that was held by Makali Gosala, one of the ascetics of the time, that the Buddha denounced as having wrong views that were leading people astray. The next one. I have heard those who have practiced power meditation deliberately can transfer their consciousness to Tusita realm at the time of death. This is true. The power meditation is a Tibetan practice that prepares one and carries on the death and rebirth practice consciously. And I think that is held in Tibetan Buddhism, that one can choose one's realm of existence. In Theravada Buddhism, we don't have really the exact equivalent of power meditation, but one can make an aspiration to be reborn in a certain realm, and that will not guarantee rebirth there, but it will set the conditions and make the conditions far more likely that you will be reborn there if you've met the karmic requirements. What political views would Buddhism hold? I thought ordained monks cannot be involved directly with politics. This is correct. That's another big question. Um, I don't think there's any political political position you could say is necessarily Buddhist or not. Cases can be made from. There's a few suttas where the Buddha talks about what we would call political matters. In one sutta, he talks about a foolish king and a wise counselor, and the wise counselor is suggesting to the king that basically social programs like loaning people capital to start a business, granting people land to make a farming, finding work for those who want to labor. So that sounds like socialism or social democracy. And there's another sutta where the Buddha talks about the practices or characteristics that will ensure that a republic lasts a long time. And that's all the advice there sounds pretty conservative. He talks about having respect for the symbols of the country, respecting the old laws, not changing the old laws, and so on. So I think you can kind of cherry pick what you want. As for monks being involved in politics, that is a controversial point, and I tend to think monks should not be directly involved in politics. But there are monks who have been. In Sri Lanka, there are monks who've actually been elected to parliament. And there have been monks who have been politically active or vocal. I don't think it's really proper. But that's there are those who hold differently. Next one, Venerable Sir, should I observe Sakadawa and give more donations during this time? Is there a suitable way of generating merit? Is there a more suitable way of generating merit? Any deed, any good deed that you do, any kind-hearted deed or generous deed is making merit. It doesn't have to be done at any special time. Someone says Shadow might be into Tusita right now. Yeah, let's hope so. My question, is it a good aspiration to aim for rebirth into Tusita to be able to meet Maitreya and study the Dhamma directly from the Bodhisattva? Yes, that's a worthy aspiration. I heard Ajahn Martin say he dedicated enough merit to his, so when his parents died they can go to heaven. What kind of merit can we do as laypersons to accomplish the same for our loved ones, please? Anything, as I said before, anything you do with a selfless act and an act of kindness or generosity, helping others in to reduce their suffering is meritorious. Is there a prayer for souls in hell realms and heaven realms? No. Once a being is in either heaven or hell, they're beyond any intervention we can do from here. Um, Generally, the general rule is we make merit, transfer merit to for beings in the ghost realm. That's kind of a transitional space. Shakyamuni Buddha discovered the Four Truths and Eightfold Path only during his last birth, right? He did not know that when he was Bodhisattva, they went to Tusita. I ask this because Shakyamuni Buddha taught Dhamma to his mother, who was a Dewa in Tusita. If Maitreya learns of the Four Noble Truths through word of mouth, that would not fulfill self-awakened quality of a Buddha. That's an interesting scenario. Uh, no, I think you're right in that when he was a Bodhisattva Maitreya, he was not fully enlightened as yet, although he was very close to it. This is, so it can't. This is a speculation of I've not thought through before. But if when the Buddha taught his mother in Tawatengsa, and she was from Tusita, so she goes back to Tusita, and then she either tells Maitreya directly or he hears it from another Dewa about the teachings. It might be that one explanation that occurs in my mind is then he doesn't remember. He hears those teachings verbally, but it's not internalized in him enough to actually attain Buddhahood. And then when he becomes a human on the earth, he forgets about it. So, I recently saw Zardoz. It's a movie, I think. I presume, having been a bhikkhu for so long, you're unfamiliar with it. But I was surprised at the presence of many Buddhist concepts, particularly the power of dhammas of Dewas, believing they were immortal, when in fact Zardoz said the ability to maintain their realm was diminishing. Yeah, it sounds like it might be an interesting movie. Can Maitreya Buddha decide not to become Buddha? Does he really have a choice? How did Siddhartha Buddha accurately predict even his name as a human who is not yet born? I don't see Maitreya Buddha really has a choice at that point, because once the teaching is that once a bodhisattva makes the aspiration for Buddhahood in the presence of a living Buddha, it becomes his fixed destiny, and he's on his way to becoming a Buddha. Just as if someone attains stream winner, they have a fixed destiny to become an arahant at least at the latest 7 lifetimes later. Can you kindly recommend best way to introduce my 13-year-old daughter to Dhamma? Please, Bhante. Perhaps through stories. You can find Jataka stories and Dhammapada commentary stories that might interest her. Is becoming enlightened and becoming a Buddha in this life impossible? Or near impossible? Well, enlightened, it's quite possible to become a stream winner at least, but to be a Buddha in this lifetime is theoretically impossible, because we're still in the dispensation of a Buddha, and the new Buddha will only arise when the previous Buddha is forgotten. Why do some sects forbid monks eating animal products? This is a restriction in many, but not all, Mahayana traditions. It's vegetarianism. and it's I think it's a development from from sila of non-harming, taken to that kind of logical conclusion. How does Buddhism approach the problem of the one and the many? I think that at least at Theravada Buddhism, the philosophy in the Abhidhamma particularly is definitely pluralistic. It's not monistic. There are a couple of passages where the Buddha listed as a false view the idea of the one, although it's obscure as to what exactly he meant by that. I can't speak to whether there were monistic schools of Buddhism in elsewhere, but in Theravada, the idea of the one is not really doesn't really work. Every dhamma is kind of unique. Would all of these realms essentially still be empty and exist only on the concept perception of the observer reference point? Yeah, I think that's one way of looking at it. Can following precept and generosity ensure rebirth in the Dewa realm? Well, there's no surety, because you can't know what you might have done in previous lives. It's still unextinguished karma, but that is the way to let's say maximize your chances. The way Dewas make love seems like a reversal of humans entering into romantic relationships. First look at each other's eyes, etc., etc. At what point do Dewas stop entering into romantic relationships completely? Yeah, I was talking about this once to a group, and somebody said, that sounds like high school in reverse. The Dewas are all this, the sensual heavens of the Dewas are all still within a realm of sensuality. They still have two genders, and they still have attraction and act upon it. But when we cross the threshold, which we'll get to in 2 or 3 weeks' time, we'll talk about the Brahma worlds. That's entirely different. They don't have, the Brahmas don't have separation into male and female. They're all just reckoned as beings, and they have no sensuality at all of any kind. So so that's it. Some Zen are vegetarian. Also, Jains are vegetarian. Yes, yeah, Jains, I know that, and many Zen, not all Zen, I think. Is it seen as good karma to be vegetarian in your opinion, as a lay especially? I think that's a decision everyone has to make for themselves. I think it can, it can be, it can perhaps be a way of trying to purify the karma. I know that amongst Asian Theravadan monks that I've encountered, very few vegetarians, and the ones who are, they do it as a kind of an ascetic practice to deny themselves the most delicious food, which is not a reason I think too many Western vegetarians would consider. Okay, I think I'll maybe wrap it up there for today, and we'll come back next week and deal with the two remainings, the realm of those who delight in creation and the realm of those who delight in the creation of others. So,